For an audience that tracks the intersection of geopolitics, energy markets, and presidential decision-making, the last 48 hours have offered a strange case study in contradiction. A sitting commander-in-chief, one who built part of his public persona around strength and resolve, just delivered a primetime address that effectively walked back nearly every major claim he made when he first committed forces toward the Strait of Hormuz. And he did so using language so dismissive of military action that it caught even his usual allies off guard. Here is the core tension that matters for global supply chains and energy prices. The Strait of Hormuz is not just another shipping lane. Roughly 20% of the world's petroleum transits that narrow passage. When a president threatens military action there, crude oil futures react within minutes. When that same president then suggests the problem should be solved by other nations, while calling the entire military effort a quote, little journey, markets have to reconcile two completely different risk assessments. What we heard tonight was not a typical policy update. It was a public retreat framed as a handoff. The president acknowledged that after weeks of troop movements, after threatening to bomb Iran back to an earlier technological era, and after demanding that Iran reopen the strait or face consequences, he is no longer positioning American force as the primary solution. Instead, he argued that oil-dependent countries must take the lead in protecting the passage. That is a significant shift in doctrine, whether the administration admits it or not. Consider how rarely a U.S. president describes a military engagement as a little journey. Even limited operations, from Grenada to Panama to Somalia, were framed with language carrying weight and seriousness. No previous president has minimized the risks faced by service members in an active theater by comparing their mission to a short trip. That choice of words signals something unusual. Either the president genuinely does not view this as a real conflict, or he is attempting to lower expectations so dramatically that any outcome short of total defeat can be spun as success. The stated rationale for the operation has also shifted in real time. Early on, the administration pointed to Iran's uranium stockpile, claiming the regime was dangerously close to weaponizing. Intelligence assessments from multiple agencies did not support that timeline. Iran has been moving slowly, far more slowly than Pakistan did in the 1990s, when it completed a weapon in total secrecy and tested it in a mountain range before the world knew how close it had come. That historical comparison matters because it shows what genuine urgency looks like. Pakistan's program was a true surprise. Iran's progress, by contrast, has been incremental and well monitored. So when the president now stops mentioning the uranium stockpile entirely, the original justification for the conflict begins to hollow out. Here is the counterintuitive insight that investors should sit with. A president admitting failure and announcing a near-term exit from a conflict can actually reduce certain market risks, even while it raises others. On one hand, the immediate threat of a full-scale war in the Persian Gulf decreases when the commander-in-chief says other nations should take the lead. That lowers the probability of a sustained supply shock that sends oil to record highs. On the other hand, it signals to allies and adversaries alike that U.S. military threats may carry a shorter expiration date than previously assumed. That perception can encourage more aggressive posturing from Iran, which already controls the strait and has dismissed recent American actions as performative. The Iranian response has been measured but telling. Military officials there stated that the strait will reopen, but not for the current U.S. administration. That is not a concession. It is a restatement of existing control. Meanwhile, the head of Iran's Parliamentary Security Commission dismissed the president's threats as hollow. When both sides agree that one side is backing down, the power dynamic shifts permanently. Domestically, the political fallout is already visible. Approval ratings have fallen to 35%. 61% of Americans believe the president is becoming more erratic with age. And perhaps most strikingly, even figures on the fringe right, like Alex Jones, have begun saying the president needs an intervention and that his mental state appears to be deteriorating. When a leader loses the lunatic fringe, as the script noted, the political freefall is real. But for investors, the more relevant question is what happens next to energy markets and supply chains. Gasoline prices have already jumped above $4 per gallon nationally. That is not just a consumer pain point. It is an input cost for transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and retail. Higher diesel prices clog supply chains because every truck on the road faces steeper operating costs. Those costs get passed along to every physical good sold in the country. So even if the military conflict ends in 2 or 3 weeks, as the president now promises, the economic consequences of the uncertainty he created will linger for months. The most telling moment of the address might be what was not said. No detailed plan for securing the strait. No timeline for troop redeployment. No explanation of what a deal with Iran would actually look like. Just a vague promise that bombing would resume if Iran does not agree to something, paired with an equally vague promise that the war would end almost immediately. Those two statements cannot both be true unless the definition of war has been stretched beyond recognition. For a viewer focused on macro trends and market cycles, the takeaway is not about who won or lost a rhetorical battle. It is about the growing unpredictability of U.S. foreign policy as a variable in global energy markets. When a president threatens war crimes, then backs away, then threatens them again, then sets a 3-week deadline for victory, the risk premium priced into oil futures becomes almost impossible to calculate. Some investors will interpret this as a sign that conflict is unlikely. Others will see a commander-in-chief whose threats no longer carry credibility, which invites more aggression from adversaries. History suggests that markets hate clarity only when the clarity reveals bad news. But they hate uncertainty even more. Right now, we have uncertainty layered on top of contradiction. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Iran remains in control. The president has announced his surrender, in effect, without solving the problem his own posturing created. And the only certainty is that American consumers will pay more at the pump, while the world waits to see whether any nation actually steps forward to take the lead that Washington just abandoned.